Daniela Leverani, a spirited 24-year-old from the historic city of Edinburgh, Scotland, had always felt an unquenchable thirst for adventure coursing through her veins. Since childhood, she had been captivated by the idea of travel, of leaving familiar places behind to explore the vast, unknown corners of the world. She relished the thrill of backpacking, where each journey felt like a new chapter in her life's story. And she took great joy in immersing herself within foreign cultures. As the years passed, Daniela's wanderlust led her across numerous countries, weaving her path through bustling cities, tranquil villages, and hidden landscapes. She formed connections with fellow travelers along the way, sharing stories, laughter, and moments of awe as they uncovered the diverse beauty and richness of faraway lands. These experiences granted her not only a profound sense of freedom but also a clarity about her life's purpose, something she had never quite felt before. She thrived in unfamiliar surroundings, discovering a remarkable peace in the unpredictable, embracing the unknown with an open heart. Each journey seemed to peel back a layer of herself, revealing insights she hadn't known were there. However, this latest adventure was destined to unfold in ways she hadn't anticipated, leading her to an encounter that would leave a lasting, haunting impression, one that would stay with her long after she returned home. Daniela's latest journey took her to Southeast Asia, a part of the world she dreamt of visiting for years. Her trip began seamlessly, following the carefully crafted plans she had made. Her first destination was Vietnam, a country she was eager to experience firsthand. She longed to absorb the culture, vibrant and rich in history. From the bustling, colorful streets of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City to the serene, breathtakingly picturesque countryside, the very energy of Vietnam captivated her. The cacophony of street sounds, the fragrant aromas wafting from food stalls, and the vivid colors of fresh produce at local markets were a feast for her senses. She marveled at the locals weaving skillfully through the traffic on roaring motorcycles, each person moving with a sense of purpose yet fluidity, as though part of a choreographed dance. Every moment felt like a perfect snapshot of life in its most dynamic form. With a spirit as free as ever, Daniela rented a motorcycle of her own, eager to experience the country on her own terms. This newfound independence brought her a deep sense of fulfillment, allowing her to navigate winding, scenic roads at her own pace, pause whenever she wished for a photo, and lose herself in the vastness of the landscape. She took her time, savoring the sights, sounds, and smells that filled each corner of the Vietnamese countryside. But one afternoon, as she was riding through a particularly remote area, her adventure took an unexpected turn. Approaching a sharp bend on a narrow, gravelly path, Daniela suddenly found herself losing control of her motorcycle. In a terrifying instant, she skidded off the road, her heart racing as the world blurred around her. When she finally came to a halt, Daniela was shaken, her mind reeling with what had just happened. She had only a few scrapes on her arms and some bruises forming on her legs, but the scare was enough to remind her of the unpredictability lurking beneath every adventure. Despite the shock, Daniela took a deep breath, gathered herself, and brushed off the dirt from her clothes. She reminded herself why she was here, taking in the scenery around her, and, with a newfound respect for the road, she climbed back onto her bike, determined to move past the mishap and continue her journey. She rode on, her spirit resilient and her heart as open as ever. Yet, in the days following the accident, Daniela noticed something unusual, a persistent, nagging itch deep within her nose. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a minor tickle, a sensation easily dismissed as a simple irritation from the dust or perhaps a lingering after effect of her tumble on the roadside. Southeast Asia's roads were often lined with dirt, and the air could be thick with particles that drifted up from the passing motorcycles and cars. Daniela assured herself that her sensitive nose was simply reacting to the unfamiliar environment, to the clouds of dust stirred up as she navigated Vietnam's scenic, winding routes. However, this small discomfort refused to fade. Instead, with each passing day, it grew into a maddening sensation that gnawed at her, creeping into her thoughts and disrupting her focus. At night, as she lay alone in her hostel bed, the itching seemed to amplify, becoming sharper and more insistent. She would lie awake, feeling as though the sensation was burrowing deeper inside her, beyond the reach of any attempt to scratch or soothe it away. She rubbed her nose endlessly, hoping to quell the itch, but it offered no relief. Blowing her nose provided only a fleeting respite, and allergy medications seemed ineffective against this peculiar irritation. Desperate for relief, Daniela tried various remedies, inhaling steam from hot water and even experimenting with local remedies she found in the nearby pharmacies. Yet, none of it worked. The itch seemed to be embedded in her nose, a strange, unsettling presence that had taken root somewhere just beyond reach. She began to wonder if there was something deeper at play, something more serious than a simple allergy or environmental irritation. Despite her efforts to brush it off, an uneasy feeling began to creep into her mind. A subtle but growing sense of dread she couldn't quite shake. Perhaps it was just paranoia setting in, a natural reaction to being so far from home and in a foreign country. But as the itch continued to intensify each night, Daniela felt herself growing increasingly anxious. She tried to reason with herself, reminding herself that the itch might simply be a product of her surroundings or a lingering side effect of her recent accident. Yet, despite her reassurances, the ominous sensation of something out of place remained, hinting at an unsettling reality she was not yet ready to confront. A few days later, while strolling through the bustling streets of Hanoi, Daniela felt a sudden trickle inside her nostril. Reaching for a tissue, expecting just a bit of moisture, she was shocked to find it soaked in bright red blood. The sight startled her, but she shrugged it off, assuming it was due to the dry air or perhaps the result of scratching her nose too roughly. However, the nosebleeds didn't stop. They continued over the next few days, each one bringing a fresh wave of fear and causing her heart to race as she dabbed at the blood. What could be causing this? The itch was now accompanied by these unpredictable bleeds, and the discomfort was growing harder to ignore. Daniela's concerns mounted as she realized her body might be signaling that something wasn't right. She knew it was time to return home and seek help. Traveling further wasn't an option while something so unsettling persisted. Back in Scotland, Daniela hoped things would improve. But the nosebleeds only grew more frequent. Every time she felt the blood trickling, she would freeze, dreading what she might see in the mirror. Standing by the sink, she watched the bright red drops splatter onto the white porcelain, her mind consumed with worry. The constant itch kept her up at night and haunted her during the day. filling her with dread she couldn't shake. She tried to convince herself it was minor, a passing issue. But the sense of unease only intensified. Exhausted, Daniela found herself desperate for relief one evening and decided to step into the shower, hoping the hot water might soothe her discomfort. The steam filled the bathroom, and as the warm water flowed down her face, she allowed herself a moment to relax, breathing a sigh of relief. Suddenly, she felt a sticky sensation on her upper lip, and her heart skipped a beat. Was it blood again? She wiped her lip, and what she saw on her hand made her freeze in terror. It wasn't just blood, something dark, slimy, and alive was hanging from her nostril, moving slightly. Horrified, Daniela's stomach twisted, and panic surged through her. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and dialed for an ambulance, her hands trembling as she struggled to explain the terrifying situation. She needed help. Urgently. The minutes waiting for the ambulance stretched painfully long. Daniela kept staring at her reflection, unable to process the grotesque sight before her. The leech dangled from her nose, a dark, slimy thing swaying slightly, and an intense urge to pull it out herself seized her. But fear stopped her. What if she made things worse? What if it slipped further up into her nose? Once she arrived at the hospital, doctors and nurses quickly gathered around her, their faces a mix of shock and curiosity. They moved her into a bright examination room, and one of the nurses shone a light up her nose, gasping as she saw it. Turning to Daniela, her face serious, she said, "It's a leech." Her tone held disbelief, as if she couldn't fully grasp what she was seeing. Daniela's mind reeled. A leech? How was that even possible? A surge of nausea and fear washed over her. The nurse's words echoed as if in a nightmare. Soon, Daniela was taken to a treatment room, where a doctor and 2 nurses prepared to help her. The harsh brightness of the lights and the sight of metal instruments heightened her dread. The doctor carefully inserted forceps into her nostril, gently trying to create enough space to reach the leech. Nurses held her steady, their hands on her shoulders, offering calm words of encouragement. "You're doing great, Daniela," one of the nurses whispered reassuringly. Daniela gripped the bed, her knuckles turning white, and shut her eyes tightly, feeling each nudge and tug as the doctor attempted to remove the leech, which seemed to stubbornly resist. Every second stretched into an agonizing eternity as Daniela felt the creature squirming, retreating upward toward her sinuses. The pain was sharp and unyielding, a pressure deep within her head that sent waves of discomfort through her body. She fought the urge to scream, her breaths coming in shallow gasps, tears streaming down her cheeks as she endured the surreal ordeal. The clink of tools, the doctor's murmured instructions, and the nurses' soothing voices filled the room. Daniela clenched her jaw, every fiber of her body tense with fear and pain. She could feel the leech's resistance, each tug drawing out a fresh wave of agony. The minutes dragged painfully on, each one filled with tension as the doctor worked steadily, his voice calm but with a hint of strain. "Almost there," he murmured, his voice steady yet strained. And so, Daniela held on, every moment a test of endurance, waiting for the ordeal to end. After what felt like an eternity, Daniela finally sensed the leech release its hold. The doctor let out a breath of relief as he carefully removed it. Daniela's eyes widened as she took in the sight, an almost 3-inch leech. Bloated from feeding on her blood. It squirmed in the doctor's grasp. Still struggling to break free. A wave of nausea washed over her as she realized that this creature had been inside her, feeding off her for who knows how long. Its slick, twisting body reflected the light, intensifying her disgust. Her stomach churned at the thought of something so grotesque hidden within her, sustained by her own blood. It's been feasting on your blood for quite a while now, the doctor said, shaking his head slightly. He explained that the leech likely entered her system while she was in Vietnam, possibly from contaminated water. Although he spoke steadily, Daniela could sense his amazement beneath the calm tone. Imagining this creature growing inside her, day by day, was nearly impossible to fathom. If it had gone unnoticed, it might have led to serious complications, perhaps even migrating into her sinuses. Daniela shivered at the thought, feeling immense relief that it was finally over. She looked at the doctor, her voice barely audible. "Thank you," she whispered, eyes still wide with shock. Daniela returned home with Mr. Curly in a small container, a bizarre, almost revolting souvenir from the ordeal she'd just endured. The doctor advised her to keep it for a day, in case they needed a sample for further analysis. But the mere thought of it near her was unnerving. The next day, she'd had enough. She boiled the leech before discarding it, erasing any chance of its return. "I made sure he was gone for good," Daniela said with a nervous laugh as she recounted the experience to her friends. "Trust me. I boiled him first." Her friends stared, expressions a blend of horror and disbelief. Sarah shook her head, stunned. "I can't believe you actually took it home," she said. "I would have left it at the hospital without a second thought." Daniela gave a tense smile. "Believe me, I wanted to," she admitted. "But they insisted. I barely slept that night, convinced it would somehow escape the container." The entire experience left Daniela shaken to her core, lying helpless in the hospital bed, as doctors worked to remove the creature, was a memory that would stay with her forever. Even back home, she couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability, her hand often reaching up to her nose to make sure there was nothing lurking there. Each tiny itch would set off a wave of anxiety. But despite that lingering fear, she was relieved that the nightmare was finally behind her. What she'd expected to be a straightforward backpacking trip had instead become a tale of horror, a story she knew she'd tell for years, even though it was one she'd never want to relive. She felt immense gratitude for the doctors who managed to extract Mr. Curly, staying composed in a situation that would shake most people. Their calm professionalism had meant everything to her. Her friends were captivated as she recounted the ordeal, their faces a mixture of horror and disbelief. Some flinched. Others gasped. "I don't know how you managed to keep your cool," one friend said, wide-eyed. Daniela managed a faint smile. In truth, she hadn't felt calm at all. Fear had gripped her the whole time. "I wasn't calm," she confessed. "I was absolutely terrified. But there wasn't much I could do." Another friend, Mark, shook his head in admiration. "Still, you went through all that and made it out the other side." That takes real courage. Daniela shrugged. Maybe. But one thing's for sure, I'll be way more cautious from now on. I'm not drinking any water without checking it first. They all laughed, though her words carried a note of seriousness. She'd learned her lesson. Always carry a first aid kit. Look out for potential hazards. And be careful about what she consumed. Yet, even after everything she'd been through, her love for exploring remained unshaken. The world was still full of beauty and wonders, even if it held a few terrifying surprises along the way. There were so many places left to explore. So many adventures waiting for her. Though a bit of fear lingered, it wasn't enough to stop her from following her passion. With a mix of relief and amazement, Daniela closed this strange chapter. Another adventure to add to her collection of stories, one. She thought with a smile. That was best saved until after everyone had finished their drinks. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.